it's my husband and myself, and our daughter Kaylin, who would be 3 now, if she hadn't passed away earlier this year. And I was a stay-at-home parent. It was a decision that we had made when I discovered I was pregnant while we were moving here and unpacking boxes. It was nice to have the, ability to be able to stay home. But when she was 2, I was planning on starting to go back to work or start up my photography business again. And when we got her diagnosis around 1, I just was able to stay home and take care of her, which turned into a full-time job with a part-time job dealing with insurance company. Well, as her mother, I honestly never suspected really that there was anything wrong. She was born normally and progressed normally, and somewhere between her 6 and 9 month appointment, we had changed pediatricians, and we had been talking to our new doctor and had mentioned, Kaylin was sitting, she always had to sit up, like even when she was 2, like supported, and then, or 2 months old. And then when she got to around the 6 to 9 month appointment, we had noticed she was falling over. And I thought for a while it was just because she was super excited and throwing her arms in the air and lost her balance and being silly. And I think we finally discovered a little bit later on that it was a decrease in tone. But the doctor referred us to the ITC, the Infant-Toddler Connection, for an evaluation, which is nice in Virginia that it's free. It just sometimes takes a little bit of time to get in, and it was November, I think, when we finally got in to see them, and Kaylin was probably 10 or 11 months old at that point. And they evaluated her, and we met with an OT, a PT, and I think there was also a speech person in addition to the coordinator. And they said, Kaylin was testing at 4 to 5 months age for a lot of the things. And they said, well, maybe she's not playing with toys beyond her feet or going to reach things or crawl for things because she can't see them. Like they said, her right tracking looked a little slow, and they referred us to an ophthalmologist. And they couldn't really refer, but they gave us kind of a list of a couple different places in the area. And I made some phone calls. My husband had changed jobs, so we had gotten, we had to wait for new insurance because of when the doctor was available. But we got in to see the ophthalmologist, and that appointment was kind of strange because I went by myself with Kaylin, and usually my spouse had gone with me to most of her appointments. But that day he couldn't go or chose not to go. I'm not really sure which, but I went, and the doctor looked in her eyes, and he said, I'll be right back. And another gentleman, I think from the adult practice down in it's the same office, but I think the adult practice gentleman came over and looked at her eyes, and, he said, thank you for letting me look in her eyes. And I was like, okay. And kind of as a parent, you're just like, wait a minute, like if
Something's
you need
not right.
Something's maybe not quite right if you need a second opinion. And so the doctor said, we'll just wait right here. I'm going to make a couple phone calls and I'll be right back. And I was like, okay. So I waited, and he was actually making personal phone calls to a geneticist and a neurologist on my behalf because he discovered an indicator for lysosomal storage disorders, which is a cherry red spots on the retina. And unfortunately, all the lysosomal storage disorders are fatal. It just depends on how long you have, depending on which one you get. And he's been actually really great support, checking in on Kaylin's eyes every, 3 to 4 months, just to see, are things progressing? Was her vision deteriorating? Like he told me that, not to Google it, meet with the geneticist, that kind of stuff. But he said at the next appointment that, he can't really tell me how much she can see, but vision and hearing loss are something that could happen with Sandhoff. And as her parent, I had already been doing, I'm fluent in sign language, I probably didn't tell you this, but I had already been doing signs with Kaylin and talking to her about everything. And so without knowing if your child's hearing or vision would go, what do you do to prepare for that? Well, now I'm doing signs with touch. Like, this is water. You always know when it's water, when it's bath time. Like, she knew the word for water. She knew what water sounded like. But I didn't know if those things would go, and I still wanted to be able to communicate with her on some level about what's going on in her world. So we did end up meeting with the geneticist. They ran an enzyme test for the lysosomal storage disorders, and it came back positive for Sandhoff. We met with a neurologist in February of that year, and
She was one?
It was, yeah, we got the Sandhoff diagnosis, I think it was like a week or two before her first birthday. And then, which was at the end of January. And then we met with the neurologist in February, and they did a 24-hour EEG. Yes, EEG. Yeah, so that first EEG that she had just didn't return any useful information, and she, at that point, was showing startling signs, but that's kind of just a precursor sign for seizures, is my understanding of it. So she hadn't actually had any seizures at that point. I didn't get hospice care on board until after that visit to the hospital. Kaylin ended up with a feeding tube. She had her first seizure, a grand mal seizure, in my arms as we were getting a bed in the emergency room. We almost lost her at that trip to the hospital. It's not very fun when you have to discuss options about what kind of interventions you would want for your child as she's turning blue because she's choking on her own saliva, things like that. It's not fun. Hard decisions. And a lot of times it was, how do you put her first over your own feelings? What's the best for my child? What's maybe not the best for me or my thoughts? Most of my life, and then keeping Kaylin comfortable with her disease, was making decisions of crappy choices. They said we could either take her home with an IV fluid or she needed a feeding tube, and those are the only two ways she was leaving the hospital. They said, do you want to do this? I said, yes. I'm like, it's not surgical, and I might as well know how to do it, because otherwise I have to go back to the hospital if I don't know how. And so I did manage her tube care, all of her medications. My personal experience was, I had two really wonderful OTs that came in to my home to help my daughter with, at first it was with building muscle, until we realized that her Sandhoff was the reason why her tone was low, and as a degenerative disorder, we kind of went into maintenance mode, where she would just need to be articulated and have all of her joints moved a couple of times a day. We did do some TheraBrushing, but it's a lot of work. We had a book, and the therapist would write in, I think it was like 6 exercises a week, and said do them 3 times a day. What are resources that I could have? What about support pieces for her stroller? Being a resource for the families, because we don't get the information. We don't get a book that says this thing is great for, children with low tone, or, these are head supports that are offered, and, which one's better for which. Yeah, we could see specialists, but some of this stuff, until my daughter went on Medicaid, wouldn't have been covered by insurance. So a lot of the things that I had picked up were, I saw this mom had this support for her infant. I'm like, wow, I wonder if they make that for my child for the stroller, because then, she could sit up a little bit more versus being reclined, so she could actually see where we were going. And those resources are important, because as a parent, one, I didn't have time to do a lot of research for a lot of things. I was, trying to live life as best as I could with my daughter, and I wanted to do fun things when it was nice out and we could go and do things, and I wanted to spend time with friends and socialize, and I was an on-the-go parent. My daughter never napped in her crib because we were never home for her to, and as long as all of her needs were taken care of, she was a happy and zen child. And I think another important thing to remember is these children may have special needs, but they're incredibly intelligent. I would never discount. I mean, Kaylin was nonverbal, but she had 1,000 facial expressions, most of which I'm pretty sure she got from me. Um, but she was incredibly intelligent. At 8 months, she was potty training. She was very intuitive. People always ask me if she knew where she was, and I noticed a difference because she would know when we were in church. Being in church is not a time to be, acting up or screaming and having a meltdown, or, she just knew it was church. But she also really loved listening to music and listening to people sing well, and just enjoying, I guess it was just another sensory thing for her, but just enjoying the atmosphere, going outside, having her fresh air. We went for runs. I did feedings on runs with a windshield in the rain. The experience sometimes for a lot of these children is more important than what it actually is. Play at Home Mom, I thought, was a really great resource that I discovered when she was little for sensory activities and invitations for creative play. And they have a lot of things on the blog that's characterized by age group. Well, maybe it's ability. So look at those things. I always looked at my daughter as what can we do, and never what she wouldn't do or what she couldn't do. And it never stopped us. It didn't slow us down. We were out and about. The requirement was your kid couldn't walk. Once they started to walk, they had to go in with the toddlers. Kaylin never did. She might have been the biggest kid there, but I didn't care. She liked it. Yoga got her PT exercises for the day. So it was almost the same thing. And then I got a little bit of yoga, in a setting where we were out of the house and, could meet other people or do other things and just provide enough variety. Listen to your families. I think having somebody to relate to, even if you couldn't help me in my current situation, was something that helped me, and helped me be honest with the therapist. If we had a super busy week and, or the exercise wasn't working or something, I would be the person that would communicate that and say, hey, listen, I'm trying this exercise, but I can't seem to get her to do what she's supposed to do in the right way. Are there other things that we can try, or different props that we can use, or, something else that might spark her interest to want to try to participate or, view things differently. Having somebody who could think outside the box a little bit about what her abilities are and what we could change to essentially work the same muscles was important. If something's not working, it's not working. And you have to be willing to try something new to see if you get something that works.
Somewhere over the rainbow, way up high, and the dreams that you dream of once in a lullaby. Oh, somewhere over the rainbow, bluebirds fly, and the dreams that you dream of, dreams really do come true. Ooh, someday you wish upon a star, wake up where the clouds are far behind. Be where trouble melts like lemon drops, high above the chimney top. That's where